Jeff, after a few years, wanted to have some individual power, okay, and greater breadth, so he became a private marketing consultant, and has been in that area ever since, plus a lot of other areas. The nice thing about it is Jeff is that rare individual who can walk both sides of the streets. He has 2 degrees in communication studies. He's worked in private industry as an individual consultant for 45 years. So he provides something that very few instructors in this institution and others can provide. But Jeff has taught at almost every major institution in the Bay Area, including UC, Stanford. He taught at the MBA program here. His most recent gig was at Holt University. Jeff is widely published. We have actually co-authored a couple things, a book on impromptu speaking and a book on service learning and related to communication studies. Jeff has written extensively, both in case studies and in books on creating regional wealth and to help build successful organizations. His latest book addresses applying service thinking to create more successful, cohesive, and innovative organizations. Right now, one of his specialties is seeing how companies can integrate technology to be peak performers, and how they can do that in innovative ways. So really, I don't know of anybody who can give you a better perspective at this juncture of your college careers than Jeff Saperstein. So it's indeed a privilege for me to introduce my dear friend. Please give a warm welcome to Jeff Saperstein.
Thank you, Rick. It's always a pleasure to come back here to San Francisco State. I actually taught here for 15 years in the College of Business graduate students. And what I really want you to do in the next hour is to think longer term about your own careers and where you might be going. And I'm sure that you all have a lot of anxiety about all of this. And I hope that you're going to be less anxious, actually, after this is finished. So that's one of my objectives. And that hopefully you will also be able to have a little different perspective on how you are going to move forward. So I have no agenda for you to get into marketing or technology or get into this field or that. It's really your career. It's your fields. But I'll reflect on some of the things that I have learned. And what I'd really like you to think about in what I'm going to be talking about is, even though we're talking about work, it's going to affect your personal life as well. Now, I'm not here to talk about your personal life, but one word of advice is don't compartmentalize your personal life and your work life as if they're in 2 completely different spheres, because the world of work and the world of personal life is becoming more and more integrated, and it's very wise of you to look at yourself as a whole person. Not simply, I have my life after work and I'll do whatever I need to do in order to be in my job. So I'm going to give you models and frameworks that are synthesized from a lot of other people's work that hopefully will be useful to you, and take what is useful for you. So there's not going to be a quiz. You don't have to remember everything that I'm going to be talking about. However, there may be some ideas here that will be useful for you, and we're certainly happy to put up the notes. And I have a website, and I'm going to have a PowerPoint that goes along with this presentation. So don't worry about taking copious notes. If there's something that you really want from this, you'll have it. So when you get to Rick and my age, when we've been working for about 45 years, the reality is that we're really at the sunset of our professional life. Now, the sunset, as you all have experienced, is a beautiful time, right? The shadows are a little longer, the light's a little more diffuse. You have the opportunity to reflect when it's the sunset on the day, and in our case, 40 years of work, so that you understand your life looking backwards in a way that is almost impossible to see when you were in it or before you became who you were going to become. I mean, that's kind of obvious. But when it is the sunset, I can tell you that in entering this stage of life, many of us find meaning in giving back to the youth, to young, whether it be graduate students or undergraduates or children or other people, and that finding meaning at our stage of life is very important because the productivity is pretty much over. I don't want to sound maudlin here, I don't want to sound like we're finished, but it's not the same as you who are in the sunrise of life. And in the sunrise of life, the light's pretty intense. You don't know how productive that day is going to be. And there are a lot more questions than there are answers, and there's a lot more anticipation of a sunrise, of what's coming, than in the sunset. So hopefully in your sunrise you'll get some benefit from our sunset. And what I can say to you is that if you could imagine that at an earlier stage of life we had far more eclectic interests, we might like certain subject areas, we might like certain fields like theater and film and music, and we have all these things open to us. And then in career we have to focus, and become almost single-minded in learning whatever it is that we have to learn in order to, I'm assuming that we're talking about a profession, that it's not a job, that really you're not using your minds and it's not a career. That at this stage in life we can become a little bit more eclectic. We can go back to our own interests. And so for us, thinking about our interests become very important. But thinking about your interests now, what you're interested in, is also important. So I don't want you to feel that you have to focus and eliminate who you are as you go into the world of work, and you gotta wait till you're 65 in order to be able to live your life again. You want to be able to prepare your life for your own interests and prepare your life for your own happiness, and that's going to be pretty much a theme of what I'm going to talk about. Now your parents are probably asking you the same, and your relatives the same questions that my parents and my relatives did I had an undergraduate and a graduate degree in communications, with speech communications in those days. So what are you going to be now that you have this degree in speech communications? What are you going to do with this? What title, what job, what can we tell our friends that you're going to be doing now that you're graduating? And I'm sure that they have the right concern for you, because what they're really saying is, my gosh, you've had the wonderful opportunity to have this education. We really hope that you're going to make the most of it. But they may ask the question in the wrong way. In other words, tell me what you're going to be in this career. What is the title that you're going to have? What is the company that you're going to be working for, or the industry that you're going to be working for? And it adds a layer of anxiety to you, and it certainly did for me, that you really don't have to have. So let's put that on the side for a moment. You don't have to come out of here having a different decision about the title, the job, etc. When I was your age, having gone through school and having been a pretty good student, going to Queens College in New York, was part of City University of New York. By the way, my college was absolutely free. It was $33 for registration a semester. That was it. We had a wonderful education that was free. But of course there were many, many students. There's 30,000 students, so we didn't get a lot of individual attention. But I remembered something very poignant that you may be able to relate to. I was a senior in college. I was sitting on a park bench with my dad, and I had tears running down my face because I knew I was graduating. And for the first time in my life, I was completely bewildered and confused. And it was kind of cruel because I could not see myself doing anything that anybody that I knew was an adult was doing. I didn't want to see myself driving a truck or delivery man or whatever it was. And yet I had no idea of the horizon of what it was even to be a professional, or how to get there, or whether I even wanted that. So I was bewildered and confused. Where am I going? Who will I be? Where will I live? Because I certainly didn't intend to live in New York City for the rest of my life, although I had no real idea where I would be going. And how do I even approach the beginning of the journey? So I was a good student who was facing anxiety about my own identity at age 20 because the path was not clear at all. Now, as it turned out, I went to the University of Denver because I got a waiver of tuition, and I was able to continue my education. And then even then, after that, I had to make some decisions, but I was a little bit more grounded after graduate school. But when I was in the position that you're in, it was very bewildering. And I can say that it's probably more perplexing now for you than it was for me, and I can't get into every one of your heads. But not only do you probably share some of those questions, you know, where am I going? Who am I going to be with? Where am I going to live? What am I going to do? Who will I become? The structures and the ways of working are going to so dramatically change in the next 5 to 10 years, and I'll get into some of the reason why, that even the kinds of jobs that you are aware of today will no longer exist or be radically transformed. And we are believing it will be about 50% of all jobs will be transformed radically, and I'll tell you what's coming. So even if you think you know what you want to do, chances are whatever that industry is, whatever that job is, whatever you think you're going to be doing, it's going to change in reality once you start getting into the world of work. So I'd like to use a couple of metaphors here. Think of what we're doing now as, I'm from Marin County, we're all sitting in a hot tub. We're all sitting in a hot tub because you are taking something in. You don't have to do anything. You're taking it in. You're relaxed, presumably. And there are experiences like at conferences or in seminars or where you're going to hear somebody speak where you really are like in a hot tub just kind of taking it all in. And that's one experience. I'm thinking now of work. So there are work experiences where you don't have to do anything. You're taking in, it could be an executive training program. It could be something where things are being done for you. Then there are careers, and most of the careers that we understood, certainly when we were graduating, are more like swimming pools. You've all been in swimming pools. They have lanes, and you swim in the lanes. And if you're going to be a tenure-track professor at San Francisco State or anywhere, your world of work is very much like a swimming pool. You do certain things that you're supposed to do, and there's a certain degree of measuring, like you would swimming laps. And when you get to a certain number of laps, you get to be an assistant professor, an associate professor, a tenured professor, and therefore there's a certain certainty and logic, and I know what I have to do. I do it, I get rewarded, I get promoted, and that's a swimming pool vision of work. Now today in universities, just to give you some data point, 50% of your teachers in universities, and certainly here at San Francisco State, are adjuncts who have no benefits, who have no contracts, who are basically working at 1/4 of what the people who are on a tenure track are working. And then you have graduate students who are also working. So you have a system that is already starting to come apart in the university system. And university education is going to radically change with MOOCs and all kinds of online. But that's not the point. The point is that the swimming pool analogy is not going to be sustainable in most professions. There will be a few, but in most professions, you are not entering a swimming pool. So if you're not in a hot tub, and you're not in a swimming pool, what are you in? You're in the ocean. You're in the ocean. Now, the ocean can have very smooth days where you're sailing along and it's great. The ocean is not a place you want to get lost, right? It's not like a swimming pool. There isn't an entry and an exit quite the same. You're going to hit some turbulence. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to navigate yourself in the ocean. So I want you to understand this orientation. The swimming pool, you follow the directions that are given to you in the profession. In the ocean, you got to take care of yourself. And that's what we're going to talk about. How do you take care of yourself in the ocean that is going to be work for you? Because you're probably going to work in 3 or 4 or 10 different job titles in different industries. You're going to work for some real bad people who you're going to have to get away from, who are going to be your bosses or colleagues. You're going to have to navigate with a sense of your own true north. And I'm not going to presume that I know what your true north is. What I'm going to talk about are ways that you yourselves can start to discover your own true north. And I'm going to give you 3 approaches tonight that will help you, hopefully, to do that. And those 3 are first answering the question, who are you? And it's not as hard as it sounds to answer that question, by the way. Who are you? More importantly, who do you want to become? Or what are you in the process of becoming? It's not a static who are you, it's where you're going with your lives. What are your values? You got to start with yourself, by the way, and not just assume that somebody else is going to do that for you. The second is, what is the future workplace and what it may mean for you? If you understand what's coming, then you're not just going to look with a rear view mirror at what are the kinds of jobs that are maybe available today in terms of defining who you will be 5 or 10 years from now. But what do you need to understand about the world of work in order to be able to think about yourselves in a context? And that context is going to be different than anything that you really know, because you haven't really experimented in the world of work yet. And I'm going to give you 4 questions that you can use to navigate on your way. So there's what you're going to get. We're going to talk about who you are. We're going to talk about the future of the world of work. And then we're going to talk about 4 questions that you can ask yourself continuously to help navigate your own career. Does that sound good?